the founder of Copiosis, and you are here watching the live stream, our Monday live stream, where we talk about the sticky questions and come up with sticky false answers. No, I'm just kidding. We come up with some really good answers to the really sticky questions because we really want you to understand that Copiosis is the future and that we are creating that future every single day here at Copiosis as we implement our transition strategy. If you're interested in finding out more about Copiosis, in case you're new to our innovation, you can go here and find out more about what we're doing at copiosis.com. If you have been following us for a while and you haven't checked in yet on how we spend the money, you can go to this website here and find out what our annual budget is and what we use the money for that people give us. And then finally, if you're interested in wanting to stay up to speed on the shows that we schedule or the videos that we release here on our YouTube channel, you can go to and or actually we request that you subscribe to that YouTube channel, and don't forget to click the bell so that you are notified of any live streams that we schedule in advance or any videos that we release from time to time. We have something like 500 videos in the works that we're going to be releasing from time to time over the next year or so. So we would love it if you would subscribe to our channel to be in the know on all of that. I want to introduce our guest today. Well, first, let me introduce my lovely host, Jill the Pill Dell. Jill, hi, how's it going?
Awesome as usual.
Yes, it
Good.
is. Awesome. Yep.
Sun
And
shining.
yes, it is. Sun is shining here in Portland. And then in the middle of us, between Jill and I, we have Michael Vick. So Michael Vick joined us. Hi, how are you, Michael?
Hi, y'all.
So Michael joined us last Saturday talking with Christopher Hatton about third-party politics, and we had actually referenced this show back then. So it's good to have you here too. Jill, do you want to just kick it off, or would you like me to kick it off, or go
Yeah,
for it?
I,
Yeah,
I
go for
I
it.
would do that. So today we want to kind of question the idea that the mm, wealthy and powerful will be more than happy to uh, or will come on board because none of their wealth will be destroyed. They'll still have their wealth. But I guess what Michael and I are thinking is that it's it's maybe not so much their wealth as the power that that wields. Like that they'll be less willing to give up the power and influence that they can use that wealth for their for their own agendas. So we kind of wanted to go over that today and talk about that today. So I thought we'd start by just letting Michael tell us his thoughts, and then, I'll chime in and we'll see what your response is.
That sounds fantastic. Michael, what do you
All
got
right.
to say?
Yeah, so this conversation actually started with you and me, Perry,
Mhm.
on Twitter. You probably recall the
Well,
conversation
not only
with
do I recall it,
yeah
not only do I recall
yeah
it, I don't remember. I didn't know that it was you I was talking with, so it was
yeah
funny
that's
that
funny. Yeah,
yeah.
so on Twitter, for those of you who want to follow me, I am at Superman 4, the number 4, Bernie, Bernie. I'm a fan of Bernie Sanders, although I'm to the left of him on quite a lot of issues. But one of the folks that I ended up following, and he followed me back after this conversation, was a gentleman who goes by the name Comrade Momanga or Momanga on Twitter, and it was funny because in the conversation, uh, I was sort of taking both sides. In some sense, I was agreeing with some of what you said, Perry, but I was also agreeing with some of what he said. And again, to give folks some background, I do consider myself a libertarian socialist. A libertarian socialist is someone that would often be referred to as an anarchist, or anarcho-socialist, someone who believes in direct democracy, and in deliberative democracy, decentralized power, but also in the idea of mutual aid networks, and not just, the typical person that someone comes across who's a libertarian, or even someone who self-describes as an anarchist, is often someone who believes in capitalism as a like unquestioned good, that the system itself is a great thing, and if we just got government out of the way, that it would be greater. And I don't believe that. I think that without government, capitalism turns into feudalism. And so without that regulation of the government. But I do believe that ultimately we need to be going toward a decentralized system. And so the question becomes, how do we get there? And the way that Copiosis would like to get there is sort of, in some ways, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Perry, but in some ways, is sort of using the system to change the system in some respects. And also, um, rather than the traditional sort of socialist insurrectionary idea of gathering enough people, or creating conditions under which you're creating a revolutionary moment, a perhaps a forceful, violent revolution, if necessary. That we're not going that route, and so the question becomes, can you get people who are currently benefiting from the capitalist system to come on board with a system change, simply by telling them you're not going to get, you're not going to lose your wealth, because our both myself and many of my socialist comrades, including the gentleman that we were having a discussion with, would argue that that's not enough. That they don't actually uh, want just wealth. They want wealth and the power that comes along with that wealth. And there are some of them who are born into that wealth and feel entitled to that wealth and have an entitlement mentality to that wealth. There are also people who are, among the wealthy, who are have psychological issues that we need to delve into. People who are sociopathic, psychopathic in some sense, and hoard wealth in order to maintain control over people's lives, and they don't necessarily have the kind of moral compass that we would like to see in people, that would perhaps lend itself toward coming on board with a system like this. So whereas some portion of the wealthy might have just recently become wealthy, and they want to pull people up
Yeah.
to that level with
Yeah.
them because they care about people.
Yep.
And there are many people like that.
Yes.
A name off the top of my head, Nick Hanauer of Pitchfork Economics, is somebody that strikes me in that way. And there are some wealthy people who understand that we can't have this level of income inequality, not just for moral reasons, but for self-interest reasons. They don't want to see a revolutionary moment come about. But there are other people, and so those are the people that we described. So I would love to hear your thoughts, really on how you think we can get more people on board with Copiosis who are of that type, not just the people who want to keep their wealth, but the people who want to keep their power, and the people who have psychological issues that I just described, that may be a barrier for them to come on board with something like this.
Yeah. There's a lot to talk about here, and I do want to respond to what you just recently said, but I also want to respond to some of the things you said before. I think one of the reasons why communists, particularly, are feeling rejuvenated in their energy with regard to seeing communism happen in the way they believe communism operates is because they see what appears to be the decline of capitalism, which was projected by the founders of communism as the stage just before communism. Um, and so I get that excitement. And I think what we're seeing is not, we're looking at something that is very fluid, and the fluidity is birthing the opportunity. let me explain what I mean by that. So like when we talk about the rich and powerful, usually I think we're talking about people like Bezos and the Koch brothers and Bill Gates, people like that. But there are other people who are becoming as wealthy, who are they're not as beholden to the status quo as maybe those type of people are, even people like Hanauer. Um, these wealthy people are inheritors of great wealth, but they're also creators of great wealth. And what's common among these new wealthy people is that they're really young. And as a result of being really young, they have a different way of looking at the world than the, let's call it the let's distinguish them between as the nouveau rich and the established rich. And these nouveau rich, these young people with a lot of wealth, whether inherited or created through like a startup or an exit from a startup, these people are in the same exact mindset as we are at Copiosis. They're using their wealth to they would say to do away with capitalism. We don't see it that way, but it's kind of the same outcome is what they're looking at. And so there's constantly a new crop of wealthy people being born, so to speak. And soon that wealth will overpower or outnumber the um, the established rich, because the established rich are pretty static. The nouveau rich is going to overshadow them because there's always more rich people happening. So we lost Michael there for a second. I think he's, oh, there it goes.
I'm back.
Okay. And so when we talk about the rich, we're not so much talking about the Koch brothers. He's going to flip flop back and forth. We're not just talking about the Koch brothers, or even Bill Gates, perhaps. We're talking about people like Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, or um, Gabrielle Disney, who is an inheritor of the Disney fortune, who is specifically running an organization called Patriotic Millionaires, which are trying to do something about wealth inequality. We're talking about some nameless faces who have inherited hundreds of millions of dollars each in inheritance, that are using that money specifically to do kind of the same kind of things that we're doing. So when we're talking about the rich being better off, we're not just saying you're going to get to keep your wealth. We're saying your wealth is going to go farther than it does today, because you don't have to spend your wealth on the things you spend it on today. And we're also saying that not only are you going to be still wealthy, you're going to have the ability to amass even greater amounts of wealth in Copiosis. So you get to take your wealth into Copiosis, but then you also have even more opportunity to create wealth in our system, in our economy, than you do in the current economy, and it's going to cost you less to create that wealth. So your wealth is going farther and it's getting larger. And so that's the one thing. The second thing is when I think about Copiosis as an economic system and the opportunities that wealthy people have available to them in Copiosis. So in my opinion, as someone who knows several wealthy people, you have to think about how wealthy people become rich. And yes, there are those who inherit their wealth, but in my opinion, there are many more wealthy people who became wealthy not by inheriting it, but by the sweat of their brow, by innovating something, building it
Yeah.
into something, being successful with that building, or exiting the something they built and walking away with $300 million or something like that. And these people are looking, and many of those people that walk away with that kind of nest egg, Elon Musk is a good example, walk away from their initial exit looking for something else to do that's as exciting as what they were doing before they exited. And so the opportunities that will be available in Copiosis are far more plentiful and easier to sink your teeth into than an opportunity today where you have to pay people to join you. You have to pay people to keep them on board. You have to pay for your resources to do the thing that you're excited to do. It just becomes so much easier to do whatever it is you're trying to do. And like an Elon Musk, or even I can't remember that guy's first name, but his last name is Dyson, the creator of the Dyson vacuum cleaner. You guys familiar
I
with
think
that?
it's Eric, but I could be wrong about
Yeah.
that.
Or the guy who created Gore and Associates, responsible for inventing Gore-Tex. So these people are innovators who are extremely wealthy. Dean Kamen is another one. These people are extremely wealthy, and they're looking for opportunities to invest more of their wealth into things that make the world a better place. Ray Kurzweil is another person that I can think of who is very wealthy. He became wealthy off of, I believe, off of his first innovation, which was a dragon speech recognition, I believe. So there are lots of different types of wealthy people. In my opinion, the minority in that population are the people that want to hold on to their power and use that power in some way to control people. The last thing I'll say is the only reason, in my opinion, why people like that get addicted to their power is because their power allows them to do things that if they didn't have the power, they wouldn't be able to do. And one of those things is to amass more wealth. One of those things, another is to shape the world in the way they believe it should be, should be. Um, and then there's a really, in my opinion, a really small minority that just wants to stick it to other people. I don't think we have to worry about any of those categories of people because there's more in the population of wealthy people. There are more of, and there's going to be more of the more of those people who want the world to be a better place. And so all we have to do is appeal to that larger population, and the rest will take care of itself, in my opinion. And I think we do want the friction that will come from rich people and others opposing what we're doing because when they when they when they demoan us or they complain about us or they call us idiots or whatever, where are they doing that? They're doing that in the public square, which brings more attention to what we're doing. And
Sure.
there are enough people out there who are going to think about what these people are saying and then want to go find out for themselves what the true scoop is. And so they're helping us amplify our own message when they attack us in the way they do. So I don't have a problem with people thinking that the power hungry are going to want to keep their power. Let them keep their power until copiosis happens, then there won't be any for them to keep. So that's my
Right.
Yeah,
response.
and these are all great points. A couple things that I was just making some notes here as you were talking, because I mean there is an ethical difference between someone like Gabrielle Disney, who has really used her wealth not in her position, not just to help regular people at Disney or working at Disney, but to really stick it to a lot of the folks that are working at Disney right now at the upper
That's
echelons,
right.
and her name carries a lot of weight, and she's able
Yes.
to get on MSNBC and CNN and elsewhere and CNBC and talk about these issues to regular people in their living rooms, whereas Elon Musk, is really well known in a lot of circles, and has done a lot of good work uh, on technical issues related to battery technology, energy efficiency, creating an electric car that people actually want to buy, and using that to funnel into research and development for other things. But he's also done things like research and development into giant spacecraft that would only be affordable for extremely wealthy people to take business trips that take 30 minutes instead of 8 hours. And he's extremely anti-union.
Well,
And so,
can I jump in for a
yeah,
second?
yeah, go ahead.
Let me talk about
Yeah,
the so if you look at, don't forget he also pioneered the technology behind PayPal, and he has some other
he
things
did.
in that regard too. And if you look at what he's doing, I mean, just take Tesla as an example. And I'm not disputing anything you're saying. I just want to broaden the perspective a little bit. So what has he done? The first car he made, the Roadster, this was before the $240,000 Roadster that's coming out next year. The first Roadster he made was basically made by hand, and No one could afford them, but basically wealthy startup founders. Then he created the four-door luxury model. Then he created the SUV, and now he's got a sedan that basically middle class people can afford. And his
Of
plan has
course.
always been to well, his intent has been to disrupt the combustion engine. But he knew that his plan by necessity requires making those cars affordable to people. So yes, while and that's true with, in my opinion, that's true with everything he's doing. So yes, at first the rocket's going to be super expensive for people for only the rich to be able to afford. But so was the Model S, I think is what it's called, the first four-door Tesla that was six figures. Um, and so he, it's funny when people attack some of these business people for the way they're running their business. It's not because they're running it because that's the way they want to run it. It's because they're running it that way because they have to. That's the way the system is set up. And so um, if you look at what Musk has done with his production, it is getting to the point where it's more easily the output is more easily consumable by your everyday person. And in the meantime, other innovators that have been inspired by him are creating other cars that are electric cars that are even more affordable, like the Prius. And Chevy announced that, I think in a couple of years they said they're only going to be making electric cars. And Chevy, if that's not a people's car company, I don't know what is.
Of course, but just to get to stick with Elon Musk for a second here, I want to make a distinction uh, between Tesla, the car manufacturing portion of his business, where of course, in order to get the startup capital necessary to make a sedan like the Model 3, you're going to need to make a roadster, and then a high-end a Model X SUV, and the earlier Model S that was a high-end sedan, and I think they even had a coupe there as well. So you're going to need to do that in order to get the startup capital and to disrupt that market. I don't know that there's uh, an end use very quickly for the average person to be able to take a space shuttle and be at the other side of the world in 30 minutes. That's really going to be typically in the short, the near term, the midterm, only something that high level business executives and other folks in those kinds of industries would need to be able to do. And so when we have millions of people dying of easily treatable illnesses, millions of people dying of malnourishment in this world, I don't think that Elon Musk needs to be pouring millions or potentially billions of dollars into a pie in the sky space shuttle program for wealthy business people like himself. And so that's I think where the pushback gets it in from people like me who are on the left to folks like you in Copiosis and other people who want to use the system against the system in some respects to create a new system, is that right now we have a system that is killing 20 million people every year from easily dealt with issues like malnourishment, lack of access to clean water, these diseases that we've already cured. And so I would like to see Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and Tim Cook devoting a lot more time to those issues than they are to making sure that a multi-billionaire can get from San Francisco to Japan in 30 minutes.
Well, that's fair. And the response I have, putting on my Copiosis glasses, is is everybody, we have to recognize that people everybody is functioning from what they're passionate about. And it's okay if one person is passionate about creating basically extra atmosphere travel for business executives, and if another person, like Matt Damon, for example, is passionate about helping out people have access to water, he's investing. By the way, I think I may have said it wrong. Her name is Abigail Disney, not the other name that I used.
Gabrielle. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think you're
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so everyone is going to be. This is why Copiosis frees people up, is because right now, just to use you as an example, you don't have the resources to do those things that you think Tim Cook and Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk should be doing. You don't have the resources to do it yourself. And so
Right.
that's one of the challenges about the world as it is today is and one of the reasons why people are so freaking frustrated at the Bezoses of the world is because these people have passions about solving these problems. Not the rich people, but the everyday person has
Sure.
passion about solving these problems, but they feel helpless and hopeless about it because they can't do anything because they don't have the resources. And then they get mad when someone who does have the resources doesn't do what they think they should be doing. The operative word being should. And so the question is, why should why should a Bezos do what I think he should be doing? It's not my business what he's doing. What I should be doing is doing something that would enable me to do what I think should be done. And that's why we have copiosis, because in my opinion, without copiosis, you can't have a place where someone like you can do what you think Bezos should be doing yourself. But in copiosis, you can do whatever it is you want to do. And to the degree that you're successful, your efforts can be amplified by all the other people who share your passion. And all the while, Elon Musk can still make his space shuttle. and
So I agree with the second part.
okay.
I'm not sure I agree with the first part, which is to say that Jeff Bezos isn't just following his passion. His passion is hurting real people in the real world. It does that at his factories in the most stark ways, where people are not allowed to take proper bathroom breaks and are getting urinary tract infections. You had a situation at one of his factories, I believe it was actually here in my home state, or the state where I live right here in Indiana, where a factory worker died, and the other factory workers just had to work around this dead worker for hours, and that worker died in no small part because of the conditions at the factory where he worked, and so I think that's the issue that I have with it, because Jeff Bezos isn't just creating wealth for himself or for other people that invest in Amazon, or for people that regular people that decide to sell things on Amazon or what have you. He is, in a material sense, hurting real people who work for him, and also hurting our democracy by amassing too much power in terms of the government. Our Amazon has multi-million, I think upwards of 100 million or more contract with the CIA. And Jeff Bezos also owns the Washington Post. Those two sentences shouldn't be things that you can say about the same person. That's a problem. And so that to me, is the issue, is that we're dealing with the world as it is right now, and Jeff Bezos, uh, you know, not uh, giving a large portion of his money to real problems is a problem. But we can't just say Jeff Bezos is following his passion, and I don't have any business about what that passion is, because if that passion is gaining wealth and power, and all along the way stepping on the necks of his workers, then we as a society actually do have a role in deciding whether or not that's okay. And I do believe that.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with anything that you're saying. There's it's hard to disagree with what you're saying. Let's look at some of the characteristics of entrepreneurialism. it's very difficult for an entrepreneur, especially one who is funded, well funded, like really well funded, and the funders are pressuring the entrepreneur to build something phenomenal. It's very difficult for the solopreneur, the person who started the thing, to stay on top of all the things that are going on in his company. I'm not making apologies. I was a startup founder, so I get the nature of the business, the nature of the job, and so it's very it's not as easy as a layman might think to stay on top of all that stuff. So that's one thing. The second thing is when when you have so many people working in such a large organization that's moving as fast as Amazon is moving, it's very difficult. It's kind of like friendly fire. Do you know what friendly fire is?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's difficult when you're in the fog of war to avoid your own people shooting up your own people. It just happens
Right.
sometimes. And we would love it if the generals would get their shit together and stop blowing up my children with the weapons that my tax dollars are funding. But sometimes it happens. And in the same way, these kinds of things happen. And I'm not making excuses for it. It's a tragic thing especially when someone dies at work, for God's sakes, and others are forced to work around their bodies. But I worked at Amazon for a tiny bit as a delivery driver, and I recognize the extreme pressure and chaotic nature of that operation. As hard as they were trying, they could not keep up with the demand. I mean, they were getting packages out on time and all that, but when you lift the curtain and looked at how they were getting those packages to people on time, they didn't really have their shit together about it. Which,
Well, no, and this is the problem, Perry, is that it goes beyond that. It's a problem of human labor, and this is a perennial problem of capitalism, which is that the capitalist will often do whatever is necessary in order to get as cheap labor as possible, and in order to push the laborers who are actually performing the labor to do as much labor as possible
that's right.
for that buck. And that's what you run into with Amazon drivers being pushed beyond the limits that a human being could possibly be pushed. And the same thing goes for their factory workers. And Jeff Bezos isn't just personally overseeing all of this at the ground level, but he does create a culture within Amazon that allows things like this to happen. And
Well,
so I think that number two, your analogy to war is a really good one,
mhm,
but maybe not for the reason that you made it, which is that we shouldn't be going to the war in the first place.
I agree.
Therefore, we wouldn't have friendly fire. And in the same way, I don't think that we should be setting up a system where profit is the primary motivation for an economic system to run. And so when you have the profit motive as the end all and be all, you run into problems like Amazon, and we've run into it for the last 400 years of capitalist history. And so that's the problem that we're trying to solve. And I think that one of the best ways, and to answer our own question here about the wealthy, one of the best ways that Copiosis can solve this problem is by removing the laborers from these places.
That's exactly right.
Jeff Bezos is not going to have the ability to exploit his laborers, nor is Elon Musk, nor is Tim Cook, nor are any of these folks going to be able to exploit these laborers because they're going to have their basic needs met by Copiosis.
Going to have incomes coming from all kinds of things that they're doing naturally in the world. So working will
Right.
become less. So think about so this is why when unionizers argue for labor protections, I argue back, you're really you're 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 throwing out a red herring because the thing that's creating the need for labor unions is the fact that people get their income from only one place, their job.
Right.
And
Right.
so if you didn't have that dynamic in place, people could do whatever they want and you wouldn't need to organize in labor, because you could tell the boss to shove it if you didn't like what he was doing, because you didn't depend on that job, and the boss couldn't force you to do shit that you don't want to do because he didn't have the leverage, right?
Exactly.
And so
Exactly.
it seems to me that when, in my opinion, when labor really understands what Copiosis is talking about, labor is going to fall in behind what we're doing, because it really frees labor, and it makes being a laborer no longer necessary. Everyone becomes an entrepreneur instead of a, in the loosest sense of that definition. I mean, because
Sure. Sure.
you can raise your child and be paid for it, because
Hey
you can,
guys,
yeah.
sorry, we need to take a break.
Yeah, I well see, I knew it was going to get something this as soon as we started talking about these issues. I knew we were going to go beyond the break. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah. All
let
right.
let's take
So
a
do your
break. So yeah, so this is the Copiosis live stream called Devil's Advocate. Jill has jumped in and said, "Time out, everybody. We need to take a break."
We also need to let Jill get a word in
We
edgewise
do,
as
we
well.
do, we
okay.
do.
It's been interesting.
It's been an interesting conversation. So yeah, so
Yeah,
it's quick break.
been an adventure.
So quick break. So you're watching the live stream called Devil's Advocate. Every once in a while, we get so involved with the conversation that we forget to take our breaks, which is what has happened here. If you're interested in finding out more about Copiosis and what the heck we're talking about, you can go to this website and find all about what we're talking about. This wonderful innovation that will eliminate the need not only for labor unions but also for management. And then if you're interested in finding out more, or finding out more about the upcoming live streams and videos that we're going to be releasing, I encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and click that bell. We need an updated animation there because it doesn't have the bell thing, but you should really click that bell, because that way you'll be notified of any upcoming live streams and notified also of videos that we release. And then lastly, if you're interested in finding out, interacting with people live about Copiosis and asking some questions or something like that, feel free to join us at the Copiosis social group on Facebook by searching on Facebook Copiosis social group, and be sure when you request a membership that you answer the questions, because if you don't answer the questions, you don't get it. Okay, there, Jill, we took a break. Do you
Okay. So I just want to weigh
Oh,
in for a
wait,
minute.
one other second, one other second. So
All right.
so for the audience, if you're watching live or you're watching on the recorded version of this and you want to ask us a question or you have a comment you want to make relative to what Michael has been talking about or what I've been saying, feel free to make a comment in the comment section. We'll post your comment on the live stream. And if it's not live and you want to make a comment or ask a question, do so. We answer every comment and we will post it in the comment section. Okay, Jill, go ahead.
Cool. Okay. So first of all, I want to tell Michael, I don't put any labels on myself. I'm not a socialist. I'm not a communist. I'm not an anarchist. I'm not a, a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm not any of those things. I am a problem solver. All I am interested in is solving problems. I don't care what measures I need to take or which little piece of each little system there is out there. I am interested in solving problems. And, um, you know, that's why I like this idea of copiosis, because to me, it has the potential to solve the most problems. Okay. I understand the frustration of where we are right now. Like, what can we do now? What can we do now to oh, overcome these horrible conditions that some people are working in, and the way that, the labor force in this country, we make everything, we do everything. Without us, none of this up here would exist. They would not exist. And so I when you guys were talking about unions, all right. Well, my dad was a truck driver, he was a teamster, and they were the most powerful uh, union in the United States back in the 60s and 70s. And my dad, they actually, like when they went on strike, and then people try to cross their strike lines, and they'd get into some physical stuff. So they fought for it, basically. They defended it. And but of course, then the organized crime came in and took over, and then it, and the Kennedys worried about it becoming a threat to national security. Can you imagine if the Teamsters Union said, shut it down, shut it all down till we get our demands met? No movement of any goods by truck. I mean, 90% of the truck drivers were union. So and that's all been gone away with. And I see how over this passage of time that the labor force has been more and more oppressed. So, back in the day, we used to get wage increases of, anywhere from 5 to 10%, depending on, our performance, right? And now at the top is like 3, for most corporations. And just the, used to be all of our healthcare, vision, dental, all that stuff was all covered. And now you have to pay all these dollars into it, and you have these huge deductibles. So getting back to, there's a lot of things wrong, right? That's why we're doing this. That's why we're looking at copiosis, to hopefully solve this stuff. Hang on a second. Sorry. Getting back to the rich and powerful, okay, I agree with what you're saying, Michael. It's really tough to take when you see these people taking such advantage, and it seems that they don't care. And I think about how would we get them on board, okay? And like you say, Perry, there are a group of them, and there might be a group of them that are willing to convert and get on with it, right? Like make it happen. What I see will more likely happen is that as the average Joe out there says, screw this, if we make the laws and we make it possible for somebody to convert to this, it will tumble like an avalanche. As the more people that get on board, the more people that get on board, the more people that get on board. And like Perry said, to me, the wealthy are going to fall by the wayside, because they're not going to have the labor force to make them wealthy, because that's out of the equation.
Well, in some
So
ways, the wealthy are facilitating what you're talking about, Jill, because the technology, like Christopher likes to say, the technology is making this happen whether we like it or not. And so there's going to
Right.
be a point where innovations, not like innovations similar to Copiosis, not exactly, but similar, are so pervasive that the writing is on the wall. And so it's not going to be as big a problem as I think people think about this separating wealth from power. Michael?
well, I am curious on this point because we have talked here at Copiosis, and other folks have outside of Copiosis obviously have wrestled with this problem of automation and the ways in which automation for groups like us can help to drive down the costs of the basic essentials that we need to be able to provide to everyone, essentially free of cost, or free of charge, um, which is excellent. The problem, of course, is that in our current system, automation means degradation of the labor force power,
Yep.
and it
Yep.
can mean starvation for folks that don't have a job anymore.
Yep.
And so while we have this concurrent system that we're trying to build that could free us through the power of automation, because we as people decentralized control over that, have decentralized, sort of democratic or deliberative control over what the machines are doing. You also have this, system that we have right now where automation, the robots are controlled by the same people that we've been talking about who are currently benefiting from the exploitative system that exists. And so I'm curious your thoughts, Perry, on the fact that both of those systems are developing concurrently, and we could wind up with a situation where, yes, we have groups like Copiosis, and other groups that are in this space that are working toward decentralization and control of of the robots by regular people, so that we can benefit ourselves and get out of this trap of having to go and beg Jeff Bezos for a job. But Jeff Bezos has a whole bunch of factories that are run largely by robots right now, and so while he may not be able to do everything with robots yet, um, the technology continues to develop, and they currently have more control over the robots than we do. And so my question would be, yes, we could, drive down the costs of these basic essentials and create these mutual aid networks that are necessary to drag, enough people away from that system in order to build something, but they still have control over their robots. And so you're going to come into a situation where maybe they don't have laborers, but they have enough robots to keep their system chugging along, and keep their concurrent power dynamic, and maybe exist in their gated communities and in their walled off factories, and we're over here doing our thing, and they're overdoing their thing, and there certainly would be the potential for a explosive conflict between the two systems.
It's interesting
Well,
because there. Go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say what might be interesting is that if the people who are in, say, the Copiosis system uh, find other ways to obtain those products and services outside of that, what do we need them for? Maybe they'll supply the rest of the world with their own little thing or whatever. The people that aren't in Copiosis, maybe they'll supply those people. But I think that the people in Copiosis would be able to duplicate and much quicker, faster, and probably do a better job at it because they're not profit driven. They're, they're going to build better products that last longer, that are sustainable, that don't cost you, if you're in Copiosis, or don't cost you anything. So why would you pay dollars, for their crap when you can get something better, finer, and more sustainable and will last you your entire lifetime from for nothing? you know
Yeah,
their
yeah.
system will be supportable. At some point there'll be this turning and this switching point where Copiosis has built its own factories, its own production, its own, and been able to supply everybody with what they need, and beyond that supply people with amazing beautiful things that you know that are better and made more sustainably, and better at recycling. And it just, I just see it as, once it takes off, it's just going to wipe out everything else
Well, I think
because it's so much better.
I think there's a I think you're both describing a scenario in that is best described as a bridge too far, in the sense that it's not going to get to that point where we have the corporate leaders running their own little thing, and then everyone else, kind of like that movie Elysium, where the
That's what
masses,
I was just thinking of. Yeah.
yeah, it's not going to get that far. Because when you say automation, Michael, what I imagine is it's more than just robots. It's like it's AI that is assisting with the democratic process by distributing the democracy further. It's the effect of that creating more localized governments. It's the effect of that creating participatory budgeting. It's the effect of that causing local communities, the diversification of localized power now, making decisions in a variety of ways, diverse ways, I mean, so that some communities decide to go with a UBI sooner than other communities. And when you see that happen and people are being taken care of through a UBI, now I'm not saying that's the end all to be all, it's a terrible long term solution, but when you see that
Right.
happening, and then you might even see some jurisdictions, some municipalities because of participatory budgeting, voting for really high taxes on those mega trillion-dollar corporations that do business in their location. And so it's not going to get to the point where you're going to have this huge striation of the population. I think what we're going to see is as the distribution of power gets more decentralized and more localized, the writing, like I said, the writing is going to be on the wall. And so you're not going to have, I think what's going to happen is you're going to, and then think about, you have more than just Copiosis. So there's an entire ecosystem. And I'm not even talking about the Venus Project and the Zeitgeist Movement. There are organizations, no offense to those, I love those people, but they're off. There's a whole ecosystem that includes Holochain, Liquid Intelligence, Seeds, a bunch of other organizations that are doing a lot of what similar things to what we're doing. Nobody's doing what we're doing, but similar things to what we're doing. And all of that energy is going in the right direction. And as all that happens, there comes to be a time. So you painted the scenario, Michael, where people are starving because they don't have jobs, and they don't have jobs because automation is taking them all. But I think before we get to that point, we're going to see a huge shift in decision making to the masses. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but like where John Q. Public and Jane Q. Public have more influence over what happens in their local jurisdiction than ever before. And as that happens, there's more opportunity for things like Copiosis to be tried. Michael?
So I think actually what I was saying was a little bit different than what you're describing. What I was saying
Okay.
is, and perhaps I think Jill has solved my problem here, but my issue was, um, we're building this. Meanwhile, they have control of the robots that they have as well, and the AI that they have as well. And so we can build what we're building, but and we can take their laborers out of their factories, but they still have robots that can do a lot of the work that the laborers are doing right now. And so that was really my question was they can maintain what they've got, but as Jill pointed out, who cares if we're able to get what we need and also through NBR get what we want.
Well, it's
And so yeah.
it's challenging to think of that scenario in my mind because the benefit that what they've got, the benefit that's produced by what they've got, and rather than trying to create a separate set of industries to replace what they're got and producing, why not just bring what they got into what we're doing? And I think that's what we're going to see. I think we're going to see, and we've seen it already, you guys. I mean, look at how corporations, now I'm not saying this is a one-to-one comparison, but it is an interesting dynamic to look at. Look how corporations have gotten on the side of gay rights, or look at how they've gotten on the side to some degree of Black Lives Matter, or look at how they've gotten on the side specifically on this issue with regard to Joe, you're not going to like what I'm about to say. With regard to censorship on social media, I'm not saying that's a good thing or not, or it is a good thing. I'm just saying, look at how corporations have weighed in. And in fact, we have Tim Cook saying, Facebook, get your shit together because we're going to create a browser that's not going to allow you to take people's data. And Facebook is putting ads themselves on Facebook talking about how that's a bad thing. So there's this dynamic among the people who have the resources that has them, in my opinion, naturally inclined to go the way that we want them to go. And once the momentum gets big enough, when they can see what we're offering as attractive to them because it aligns with who they are. I mean, Tim Cook, if I'm not mistaken, Tim Cook is gay. So
He is, but Perry, just to interject real quick, and I don't
yeah,
know,
please, no,
for if we're ending it in
we've
5 minutes
got five
here, but
minutes.
yeah, so I do want to push back just a little bit because the BLM, the gay rights movement, the degree to which these corporations have gotten on board with these movements is, in my mind, at least in some sense, a
I know,
PR move.
I
And
know.
so, yeah, and so, this is not, this is, if anything, the danger there is the co-option of the movement, because when once Tim Cook gets on board with gay rights, the way that he's on board with gay rights is not necessarily the way that a young startup worker at Apple who's gay is that is experiencing discrimination,
I totally agree.
or a black person who's getting killed by the cops and is championing things like defund the police or whatever your views are on that issue. Those are not the same views that the Lakers have when they put BLM out, or when any corporation, multi-million-dollar corporation, has when they
Yeah.
put hashtag BLM on their logos or whatever. It's not the same thing.
I agree.
It's like the Democratic Party thing was hashtag resist, and because I'm to the left of them, I would always put a trademark next to that, because again, it's not the same thing as true resistance. People
Right.
who really resisted throughout history would look askance
I
at the
agree.
way that corporations have co-opted these things.
I agree. And Jill, if you're okay, let's go a little bit long. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So I have a cynical perception too that a lot of times, in fact, I see it sometimes here in Portland where businesses with big window panes as their front facing space will put Black Lives Matter up signs on their windows. And I cynically think that's just because you don't want your windows broken. That's kind of like that kind of a thing.
Well,
Duh.
also my question would be, what's going
Wouldn't
on with
you?
your black
I mean,
workers? Like,
Yeah,
are you treating your black workers well?
exactly.
Are you how are you interacting with police who are harassing black customers in
Right.
your stores?
Right, right, right,
So
right.
yeah.
So I get that, but the difference is in today's world, they kind of have to be that way because they might face the backlash of the other side. But when you're looking at Copiosis and them supporting Copiosis, there's so much that Copiosis does for everybody.
yeah.
I can't imagine, and maybe I should try, but I can't imagine a corporation, even if they whitewash it, Michael, even if they're doing it just to be PC or to woo the thousands or millions of people who are now at some point in the future really bullish on Copiosis, even if it's just to woo those people so that they can sell more shit, that's still a good thing because it just adds to the momentum of what we're doing. So there's nothing to me. So with Black Lives Matter, yes, it has, and even gay rights and even trans rights. It's a plus and minus kind of thing. There's pros and cons to corporations getting involved. And ask any person who's been at a trans march who's pissed off about Southwest Airlines having a float in the trans march because they're not really doing anything to help trans lives, really. So, but with
Right.
but with Copiosis, in my opinion, with our transition strategy and what we're doing in the three verticals, it's very difficult for a corporation coming on board not benefiting Copiosis, even if they're whitewashing, even if they want to do it just to attract customers. It still is going to benefit what we're doing because it just gives credence to the innovation where so that people who believe they won't believe in it until they see the credence they want to see. When they see that credence, then they'll get on board. So it's all good stuff.
So what's your response then, Perry, to and I'm not saying that I personally have this view, but to folks like my friend Comrade Momanga, who says that this is just going to be, that they're going to co-opt this movement and somehow turn it into something different than what we're advertising it as, if wealthy people get on board with this, that the power and wealth that they have is going to corrupt Copiosis and what we're doing.
Yeah, the answer is you have to wait and see, because the details of that answer go beyond what most people are willing to accept as an explanation. Here's where we start getting into the spiritual component of what Copiosis is all about. And the core team, so I've carefully cultivated the core team so that, and the succession, what's that called? The succession plan, such that the people who will lead Copiosis into the future, even beyond my lifetime, will be of the same philosophical underpinnings. And so the way we're implementing our transition plan is impervious to that kind of dynamic because of the way we're doing it. This spiritual component that I really don't want to interject into this conversation, because this is Copiosis and not Positively Focused, my other organization. But there's a very strong spiritual approach that is impervious to that kind of action. In fact, what it does, the spiritual approach is anyone who tries to be negative about Copiosis ends up benefiting Copiosis. It's just how it works. And so it's like, but that's not going to satisfy Comrade Mamanga.
No, because Comrade Mamanga is very likely either
Atheist.
agnostic or atheist.
That's exactly right.
And just to be clear, for those who didn't catch my first live stream with you all, I am not. I'm fine with the spiritual answer. I may not share the same spiritual views as you do, Perry, but I believe, of course, I am a theologically conservative evangelical Christian, which should come as some surprise to those who were just listening to the conversation about me being a libertarian socialist. But trust me, we could have a conversation. It wouldn't be appropriate here, but that would explain how that's not a contradiction. But I totally understand where you're coming from with that.
Yeah.
And while Comrade Momanga might not be accepting of that answer, I'm fine with that answer.
Well, see, and that's why I have to say you're just going to have to, not you, but Comrade Manga and people like of that mind are just going to have to wait and see, because we can't convince them. You can't convince someone who doesn't know what we know. But the great thing is that when you stand in what we know, you can see evidence of it happening almost every month. Almost every month, something amazing happens that we had no hand in, and yet it happened. How is it happening? And so the same thing has to be said for this sort of objection. And I am not concerned at all about the innovation will not be co-opted. Anybody who tries to co-opt it will either bounce off or get turned into a supporter. That's just how it's working.
Jill,
Yeah,
you had something?
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing is that, no system is completely uncorruptible. I mean, there might be, stabs at it or whatever, but I see like it, let's just say the three of us. And let's say Perry says, you know, I want to change the algorithm so that it rewards me every time I blink. And I are going, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. And we get three other people that think this, and maybe we're in a position where we could actually, like do something on the algorithm that would change that. So every time we blink or anybody blinks, they get, rewarded NBR. But I think when others that are also monitoring these programs go, what? Who came up with this? This is ridiculous. This isn't the purpose of what we're doing. And we're going to, sorry, but if your local community agrees to this, that every time they blink, they get NBR, then we'll think about it. But otherwise, we're shutting it down. You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
and you could. I mean, you could come up with things like that in a local community and find they get their NBR. But yeah, I think it's more, I just don't see how when you when you when you need a community, a truly democratic decision making to determine these, uh, you know, what people consider a benefit to society or a benefit to the world, or a benefit to the planet, that um, I think it would be more and more difficult to corrupt.
I'm not referring to post transition incorruptibility. I'm
Okay,
talking about pre-transition incorruptibility.
transition.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
long as me and the people designated in the succession, the line of succession, are in that line of succession, there is no way this system is our process is going to be corrupted because we are so secure. We are as secure in our philosophical approach as I imagine Michael is in his belief in God.
yeah.
And so I'm just not, it's just not going to, it just can't happen. It's impossible to
Yeah.
happen. So, but I can't convince anybody of that. So you're just going to have to wait and see as we continue to
It
move
just has
forward.
to happen.
That's
It
right.
just
I mean,
has
that's
to
an
happen.
excellent point,
Right?
and there is a saying, I think, that those who question need to step out of the way of those who are doing, and
Yeah.
so yeah, I totally am on board with that, and of course the nothing wins like winning. If we develop the system and it doesn't get corrupted, then Comrade Mamanga will have had his answer.
That's exactly
So
right, Michael.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
and that's a good time. So I've got a call at
Wrap it up. Yeah.
2:30. Yeah, so I've got to get ready for that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
This has been a
Okay.
good conversation. This is probably
It's
the
been
best
interesting.
devil's advocate yet. So thank you for coming,
Yeah.
Michael. It's been a pleasure.
It's
Yeah.
my pleasure. Anytime I have some crazy devil advocate question for you, I'll talk to Jill and we
Let's
can see if we can get on.
yeah.
Perfect.
Let's do
Perfect.
that.
Well,
All
let's,
right. Cool.
yeah,
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
yeah. Bye, everybody.
Bye.